week, we were on the continent of Africa. We went to Kenya. We went to the capital city of Nairobi. And then this week, and then we also went to Egypt as well. So this week, we are going to a new continent. We're almost done. After this continent, we'll have one more continent, but this one is our largest continent that we'll visit. This one right here is the biggest, okay? So we've been to, well, let me put the map up for us so that we can see where we have been so far. Okay, so let me show you on the screen. All right, so everybody's on page 92 while we're waiting. Okay, so this is, oh, wrong map. Sorry, that's the US. We're not in the US. Okay, so these are our continents. So we've been to North America, where we went to Canada and Mexico. We've been to South America, where we went to Peru. Then we crossed the Atlantic Ocean and we went to Europe, where we went to like Germany, Netherlands, Norway, Italy, England, France. We went to all of those places. Last week, we were in Africa, where we went to Kenya and Egypt. And we are going to the largest continent this week, which is Asia, right here. Everybody sees Asia, the orange right here? That is the largest continent. So we're going to visit 4 countries there. We'll do 3 of them this week, and then our last one will be back in Asia, okay? So this is Asia right here. So we see, remember we talked about the Indian Ocean last week? Does anybody remember what I had said about the Indian Ocean? What's kind of cool about it? Out of all the oceans, so we have the Atlantic, Pacific, we have the Arctic, but there's something about the Indian Ocean. Josiah, do you remember?
The warmest ocean in the world.
Yes, very good. It is the warmest ocean in the world. So I'm sure that's an ocean you probably would easily be able to swim in because it's so warm compared to the others, especially like the Pacific is cold. So this is so we're gonna go to our next country in Asia. We're gonna start with the first one, which is called Israel. I'm sure we've all heard of Israel. We talk about it in Bible, right? That's where we are currently talking about Jesus and him and his ministry. All those cities we visit, like Cana and Capernaum, Bethlehem, that's all in the country of Israel, okay? So if you remember when we went to Italy, we discussed Rome, which is one of the oldest cities in the world. Well, guess what's another old city? Actually, probably the oldest city, Israel, right? Because if you remember when we talked about Abraham and how God had promised him a land, that was the land that God promised him. It wasn't named Israel at the time. It was called the land of Canaan. But when Jacob, remember whenever God changed his name to Israel, all that land was named after him. So this is the land that we're talking about. So this is also one of the oldest countries in the world. Okay, so let's read about Israel. I'm gonna go ahead and read for our lesson. Okay, so we can take a bus from Egypt to Israel and we can visit the town of Bethlehem where Jesus was born. We can see hillsides outside of Bethlehem where even today shepherds watch sheep. So of course we can visit the city of Bethlehem where Jesus was born, of course, and we'll find a lot of shepherds in Bethlehem because there's a lot of like open land, hillsides in the city of Bethlehem. Next week, Jesus walked on the water on the Sea of Galilee, and his disciples caught many fish from that sea. Maybe we can catch some fish for lunch. So remember, we talked about the Sea of Galilee whenever they were fishing and they didn't catch anything. Remember, and then Jesus told them to throw their nets, and then they caught something. That's what's in the Sea of Galilee. That is one of the most famous seas in Israel. And also, when Jesus was teaching, he taught by the Sea of Galilee. And also, he's going to walk on the Sea of Galilee, which we'll get to that lesson real soon. Whenever he walks on water, that's the sea that Jesus walked on. So that is amazing. And you could go to Israel and see this today, the sea, the actual sea that Jesus walked on. Next, we can go for a swim in the Dead Sea. So there's another sea in Israel called the Dead Sea. Now, you might say the Dead Sea, why is it called that? Well, the Dead Sea is very, very salty, okay? Super salty. Because of the fact that it's salty, nothing can live inside of there. No fish, Anything, nothing can live inside of the sea. If anything tries to live inside of it, guess what will happen to it?
What?
It will die. That's why it's called the Dead Sea. So because it's so salty, fish cannot live inside of it. And the cool thing about the Dead Sea is that because it is so salty, if you are human, go inside of the sea, because I mean, as long as you don't drink the water, you'll be fine. If you just want to swim, you can do that. But you can easily float. If you just lay down inside of the Dead Sea, you'll just float because of the salt that's in it. It allows you to float like that. So does anyone know how to float now in a pool?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you don't know how, like I don't know how, if you go in the Dead
I
Sea,
know how to
you'll
float.
be able to just float easily. So that's a cool thing about the Dead Sea. So Israel, we can see the Sea of Galilee where Jesus walked on water there, and then we could visit the Dead Sea where we could float. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about 93, Jerusalem. So that is another city in Israel, Jerusalem. Remember, that's where King Herod was whenever they were looking for baby Jesus at the time. They went to Jerusalem thinking that he would have been there, and King Herod was upset. Well, that's where King Herod was, in Jerusalem.
Okay.
So Jerusalem is the most important city in Israel. It is one of the oldest cities in the world. The shepherd boy David ruled here as king for many years, and later Jesus was taken outside of this city and crucified. But 3 days later, he rose from the dead. So Jerusalem is their capital city. It's called the City of Gold because of the sunlight reflecting off of the buildings at sunset. So that's a nickname for it, the City of Gold. So Jerusalem is their capital city, and it's also one of the most important cities in Israel. And also, we already know in our Bible, it's a city that we talk about often, Jerusalem. Okay, so today when you visit Jerusalem, you can see old buildings and walls that have been here since Bible times. So you could see a lot of things in Jerusalem that were in the Bible times. You could go there today and still see those things, which just shows us that our word is true. We can also see modern buildings that they built, of course, and we can look that the buildings look just like the buildings here. Okay, so in Jerusalem, the people have a favorite sport, which is called soccer, but they call it football there. We call it soccer here, but they call it football, just like in the other states. I mean, the countries, we talked about that already, that a lot of their favorite sports is soccer in a lot of their countries. Okay, so, sorry. So this is Israel. And so you can look at the pictures here at the bottom, and there's a lot of cool things that you can see there. So it would be nice to go there one day, to walk a lot of the places where Jesus walked, and to see a lot of, like, the Sea of Galilee. We walked on that sea. Okay, so this is Israel. We can visit Bethlehem, Sea of Galilee. We can float in the Dead Sea and visit the capital city of Jerusalem. Okay, all right, let's turn the page. Let's go to our next country on page 94.
I love tigers. The tigers.
I
like
So we are going to go to India, which is one of the most populated countries in the world, meaning a lot of people live there. So this is where Israel is, all up in this area here. It has other names of the countries, but most of this is really Israel. But anyway, this is India right around here, okay?
Oh.
All right. As we travel through India, we will see many people. There are over 1 billion people living in India. Yes, in that country alone, they have over 1 billion people. That's a lot of people living in one place. In one place. They're not all over. They're in this one place, India. The cities in India are like the cities in America, and they are big and busy. So many of the Indian people don't own cars because it's really hard to drive. Imagine how bad the traffic probably is in India because there's so many people that live there. So people choose to either ride bikes or they use public transportations. And also their roads aren't really that well in all of India. Some places are really, nice, but some of them, they don't have really good roads. Okay. So there are many unique animals that come from India. So if you remember in Africa, we talked about how elephants and giraffes and zebras, how lions, they all come from Africa. Well, there are certain animals that come from India, one of them being the tiger. Tigers are known to be from Asia, and some of them are from India. Also, we have the white tiger, the white leopard there too. You can see him, the snow leopard. He's right there in the picture next to the tiger. So snow leopards and tigers are also from India. When we leave India, if you look on page 95, we will fly over these famous mountains called the Himalaya Mountains. These are some of the highest mountains in the world. They separate India and our next country that we're going to visit, which is China. So those Himalaya mountains are right on the border of India and China. So if you're in India and you want to cross over into China, you would fly over the Himalaya mountains, some of the highest mountains in the world. Okay, so that is India. There's a lot of people that live there, and tigers and snow leopards come from India. Also, if you've ever had curry before, that's a famous food that comes from India. Curry. Has anybody eaten that before? Have you heard of that before?
I don't think curry's this good.
Well, I mean, you can't say if you haven't had it, but curry, yeah. So maybe you can ask your parents to try some curry. Say, Mom, can we find an Indian restaurant? Let's eat curry. So yeah, so that is India. Okay, so Israel, India. Let's go ahead and cross over India. And I'm going to show you our next country on the map. So we're crossing over the Himalaya Mountains, and we are going to go into China, one of the largest countries in the world. China. Now, I'm sure we've all heard of China before. We had to have heard of China.
I have.
China, yes. Okay, good. I'm like, yeah. All right, China. So as we fly over the Himalaya Mountains into China, we will see the tallest mountain in the world. Now, tallest mountain in the world. We visited a lot of mountains, the Rocky Mountains, the Alps in in Switzerland. We visited a lot of cool mountains, but the Mount Everest is the highest mountain in the world. And you could find Mount Everest in China, highest mountain in the world. Many people live in China than any other country in the world. So that means China has the most people that live there. Most of the Chinese people live in the countryside, and many people are farmers who grow rice. So rice is something that they grow in China, and that's why if you've ever had Chinese food before, a lot of their foods are made from rice. And like fried rice, if you've ever had fried rice before, that's something that everyone knows is a dish from China and even Japan, because they cook a lot of Japanese dishes with rice as well. But rice is something that a lot of the farmers grow in China. Rice is one of their main foods. Sometimes they just eat plain rice. Does anybody eat plain rice? Like with nothing on it? No gravy, nothing, just rice by itself. Well, that's how they eat. Rice is good. So if you don't eat rice, I might have to get some rice and cook with some food. Anyway, so most people, the capital city in China is called Beijing. They have few cars. Remember, because there's so many people, the traffic, so people ride bicycles, or they ride the train, or they ride the bus, okay? And so something cool about the way the children read in China is that they read from left to right. Okay, so we usually read from right to left, right? No, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's opposite. Okay, so sports and activities, jump rope, table tennis, basketball, volleyball. They have a lot of sports that they play in China as well. So they also have what's called a Chinese New Year that they celebrate every year. It's not, so you know how we have New Year's in January, or theirs is a little different. It's a big celebration that they have in China, which is called the Chinese New Year, and they celebrate, and they have, and cool thing about the Chinese New Year is that everybody turns a year older on the Chinese New Year. So it may not necessarily be your birthday, but whenever China celebrates their Chinese New Year, everybody turns a year older, whether it's your birthday or not. So that's kind of cool that they do that. So let's look at 97. So we will enjoy seeing the Great Wall of China. So there's this famous wall called the Great Wall of China. So China built this wall many years ago to keep the enemies from coming inside of their land. And if you look at the bottom of 96, that's a picture of the Great Wall. Okay, so that's it. Yes, it is humongous. And so it actually borders a lot of China, and they built it to keep enemies out. You could also walk. Yeah, you could also walk on top of the wall. As you can kind of see, it looks like a path, like a sidewalk kind of. So that is something that China's famous for, is the Great Wall of China. There is an animal that you could find from China, and it is the panda. These beautiful animals live in the bamboo forest. Has anybody seen a panda in person before?
No, but I heard of one.
Yes, so pandas, and the reason why you probably haven't seen a panda is because they are what's called endangered, meaning there aren't many pandas left. So it's only like select zoos in the world that have pandas. Like there's one in the Atlanta Zoo, there's one in the Memphis Zoo, pandas, and I believe the San Diego Zoo. So if you ever visit any of these places, you can see a panda. I've seen one in person before, and they are really amazing to see. So maybe one day you'll be able to see a panda. They're just so cute. So pandas are from China. That's where you actually will find them, from in China. That's where they are from. Okay, so there, like I said, there aren't many pandas left though, so we have to make sure to keep them protected and safe because there aren't many remaining. Okay, so that is China. So we could fly over the Himalaya Mountains into China. We could visit the Great Wall, which is that big wall that they built. We could eat a lot of dishes with rice because they grow a lot of rice there. And we will see pandas because pandas come from China. Okay, and they have the Chinese New Year where everybody turns a year older. All right, so that's our 3 countries this week that